Welcome back to Sports Roundtable, State News' sports podcast. I'm Jacob Smith, joined by
Luke Joseph,
Madi, Warden.
We are back for yet another episode. Last one before spring break, so we're going to make it a good one for you guys. Since we're not going to do it next week, we're going to kind of go over a little bit of some season closings for a few teams, especially the ones that have been kind of on fire and really gearing up for some potential postseason appearances with MSU men's basketball, MSU women's basketball, and we're talking a little bit about MSU hockey as well, because that's definitely a point of interest as they close their season with one remaining series, and then we'll give a little bit of shout out to women's tennis in a little bit, but we're going to start with men's basketball today. Fantastic win over Michigan this weekend. Game tonight against Maryland, but we kind of want to hit home on that Michigan win first. 75-62 over that ranked number 12 Michigan at the time. Jace Richardson, Big Ten Freshman of the Week. This game was completely electric if you watched it. It was peak Big Ten hoops, but also like peak Michigan State basketball. It just feels so good when these teams are competitive again. Fantastic win for MSU and really defining success for their season and a much-needed win.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that MSU still owns the state of Michigan in basketball, at least. But Jace Richardson arguably has been our best player these last few games, and he's even generating potential lottery pick buzz in the NBA draft, which is incredible to think about, considering that he wasn't looked at to be a lottery pick, much less a first round pick in this very deep draft class. But we held Wolf to, I think, 11 points in that game, and he's been Michigan's best player. We played in incredible defense, although Golden did have 21, but he's been amazing offensively all year, so it's kind of hard to stop him. But other than that, we really especially in the second half, we really just dominated on the defensive side of the ball. We only held them to 24 points, and it was just a big win for MSU. And now we have, I believe, 8 quad 1 wins.
Unreal.
So
yeah,
definitely helps out the resume for March.
Yeah, what'd you see, Madi?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Jacob, it's so much more fun, I think, in college basketball on all cylinders when you have two rivalry teams that are actually playing good basketball, when they're actually interesting to watch. One team isn't getting blown out by the other. They're trying to keep it close. And obviously still a 13-point win for Michigan State, but still just having that competitive energy back. I mean, last year you had Juwan Howard, who was leading just a absolutely terrible Michigan team. The year before, when we played at Chrysler, was just a few days after what happened at Michigan State, and I feel like this is the first game that Michigan and Michigan State have played against each other that's been like that heated rivalry game that we haven't seen in years. So it was great to watch these two competitive teams finally compete for something. Both of them are at the top of the Big Ten. And I even heard on, I don't remember what I heard it on, but whoever wins this series, they're Big Ten champions. That's their title. So it'll be interesting to see, especially how the last game of the series, or the last game of the season against the two plays out. And there's still a lot of basketball left.
Yeah, most definitely. I think Michigan State showed a lot of resilience in this game because they obviously went up to start that game. They went on a huge run to begin the game and kind of had Michigan shaking a little bit at home, but then Michigan put together, I believe it was a 15-0 run.
I think it was something
so
like
too.
that.
Yeah, it was a crazy run.
I think 10 minutes into the first half, I think Michigan got up 16-13 after we were just playing really well in the first 5 minutes. So yeah, they're definitely a really good team still.
Yeah, it goes to show how much they can fight back, especially on the road, because that's no easy environment. I know Chrysler Center is a very loud environment in college basketball. Obviously, Michigan fans come out for most of their games in support, but I feel like that goes to show. Michigan State has fought so much through adversity this year, even though they only have 5 losses and are number 8 in the country right now. They've been down plenty of times in games. They've had slow starts plenty of times in games, and they've always found that way to just fight back. They never really get ahead of themselves and kind of just give up at any point of the game. Obviously, Tom Izzo's not ever going to let his team do any of that, no matter who's on the court. But I think Michigan State's really done a good job of hanging in games, especially when things aren't going their way. especially when the 3-point shots aren't falling. Because I feel like we all know now that that's Michigan State's biggest weakness is not hitting the 3-ball consistently. But in this game, they shot. Where do I have it here? They shot like around 40%, 40.9% from 3. Yeah. So obviously, when they're going to shoot that well from 3, games against no matter the opponent are probably going to go in their favor. And I feel like in this game as well, they really played to their strengths. Their guard play was phenomenal. I mean, Jace Richardson had 21 on 7 of 11 shooting, 18 points from Trey Holloman, 11 from Jaden Akins, and 10 from Jeremy Fears Jr., who hasn't been scoring as much this year. And especially when their bigs were not playing as well as they're used to. I mean, Zappallo and Kohler were in foul trouble. It was great to see the guard step up.
I mean, Kohler had 2 points. Zappallo didn't even he only shot it once, and he didn't unfortunately score. But Carson Cooper played some good minutes. He went 3 for 4, had 6 points. Got 8 boards. Cohen Carr just being athletic. Xavier Booker knocked down that 1-3. But yeah, it's just this team just has like a ton of depth. Like we could go like 10 deep. Trey Holloman would probably be starting for like most other colleges instead of coming off the bench.
And he was starting this year earlier before Jace Richardson took over, so there you go.
And I think it's kind of amazing that recently Jace Richardson has kind of been that go-to guy, but throughout most of the season, nobody really looked at the Spartans and was like, yeah, they have that Cassius Winston or Denzel Valentine type of guy. Like we don't really have that, and the fact that we're 8th in the country is just amazing to watch, and it really just goes to give credit where credit's due to Tom Izzo. I mean, he's coaching his butt off.
Yeah, most definitely. He's definitely come on and kind of given us vintage Tom Izzo this whole season. And I think to your point, like obviously this team, like Jace Richardson has kind of risen as a go-to scorer. Like he's been scoring multiple 20-point games this year. Jaden Akins, obviously, with that senior leadership, he can take a tough shot, take the final shot, and you're comfortable with it. But I feel like, just like you said, like everybody's kind of coming together, playing their own role. They know what they need to do. I mean, their rebounding has been unbelievable this year as well. They had 14 offensive rebounds against Michigan in that game. They also won the turnover battle 11-15, and then they won that rebound battle overall 34-25. So Michigan State is going to be a gritty team. They're going to give kind of anybody trouble in March just because they kind of play all assets of the game very evenly, and they excel at others like rebounding and stuff like that. Obviously, their shooting is going to be streaky, so that might be their demise in March, but I feel like that this team is built to win. It's built to definitely make a run, and even like I think they're projected a 3 or 2 through like 4 seed right now. But even once they get farther into March Madness, I feel like they have upset potential on some of those top teams just because they can wreak havoc and really play scrappy defense and also get also crash the glass as well on that rebounding side.
Yeah, definitely.
I think kind of going back to what you guys or what Luke was saying about the depth of this team is just, I mean, you look at the starting 5, all were close to, 3 of the 5 were in double figures. Trey Holloman off the bench had 18, Carson Cooper 6. I mean, you see these guys that can step in and play and don't have to be in that starting 5 lineup. Like you said, it's this team with the depth that they have is fit to make a deep run in the NCAA March Madness tournament.
Most definitely. And the last point I have on kind of the performance standards, like stuff like that, like Trey Holloman scoring 18 off the bench, he's completely accepted the fact that he got demoted to the bench for a freshman guard taking his place. And I feel like his response has been unreal. I mean, we all saw those 3 straight threes that he hit in a row, which were absolutely electric. And it's just so nice to have, like, because Trey's been around for a few years now. So just to show that he will do whatever it takes to win games. And even if that means putting freshman guard Jace Richardson in his place, and then he leads the second unit, everybody's bought into the culture, and he's totally okay with that.
I think, again, that just goes to Izzo's coaching. Like, he could have, Trey could have just been like, I don't want to come off the bench. I deserve to be a starter. But, Izzo probably just coached him into being like, look, we think you can be – I know you can be more effective coming off the bench and just leading that second unit. And the fact that Trey has bought into that and it's, paying off, scoring 18 points against, arch rival, hitting those 3 straight threes. It's just incredible to watch, and it's going to be a very interesting, last 3-4 games.
They got 3 games left, including a game tonight. So 4. They tip off against Maryland in like a matter of 15 minutes at 6:30 here tonight. But Maryland comes in at number 16 in that matchup. They also close the season to number 11 Wisconsin, Iowa, and number 15 Michigan again. So obviously 3 out of the 4 last games are against ranked opponents. It's not going to be easy by any means. They kind of control their own destiny in a sense, but they've definitely shown that they can beat some of the top tier talent as they've done, putting together 3 very, very solid wins in a row with wins over Michigan, Illinois, and Purdue. So that game against Maryland should also be pretty interesting, I feel like, because there's freshman Derek Queen, who has been one of the best freshmen in the country, probably a top 10 pick in this year's NBA draft upcoming. He's the only one, though, in that backcourt that's like a true center, which should be very interesting. So I feel like this matchup is going to be different because Simone Zapata, Jackson Kohler, and Carson Cooper are going to have their hands full with Derek Queen, who plays a center, but he's also able to stretch the floor really well. He'll hit tough shots. He'll hit contested jumpers, especially from that mid-range. He's really going to kind of attack you. I think the biggest thing to watch for that game tonight, and especially for teams in March Madness that might play a little bit of a smaller lineup, is how our bigs that aren't as mobile, such as Carson Cooper, Jackson Kohler, Zapata maybe a little bit. I want to see how they can step up to the challenge and guard a mobile, jump shooting big man like Derek Queen, because he's been unreal for Maryland this year. A big reason to why they are number 16 and also at the top of that Big Ten conference, but should be an interesting one tonight.
I mean, they played pretty well against Danny Wolf, who has been playing really well as a 7-footer who can spread the floor for Michigan. But I think Derek Queen, he's just he's just so talented. Like you said, he can stretch the floor. He can knock down a 3 if he wanted to. It is going to be a really interesting matchup, and I think that is going to be the biggest challenge for MSU. Just being able to guard that. And look, Maryland's. I would say Maryland is kind of like MSU in the fact that beginning of the season they were unranked, but then they're just a scrappy team who everybody's looking to Derek Queen as the guy, but it's kind of like the Jace Richardson thing where it's a freshman just playing outstanding basketball, but they don't have kind of like that headline player, if that's making any sense.
Yeah, I like that comparison.
I was kind of going to go back to Jace Richardson, like you guys were talking about with Trey kind of losing his spot in the starting lineup. But, I mean, when you get a freshman his first time in the starting lineup putting up 29 points, I feel like that kind of warrants him to step into a role where he's almost more determined than other players on the team to help win. And especially against a team like Michigan, he was out on the court the longest out of any player. He was out there for 33 minutes. That's more than anybody was out there. It just shows how determined Jace is to make this team as good as they are. And I know that kind of like jumps back to a little bit before, but I feel like that's
great take.
Like, I think that Jace is a really big reason that this team is making it as far as they are with that power and that talent that he has as just a freshman. And I always love, like, when we bring up Jace, it's like you see his pops. You see his pops in them, and they're completely, like, they play different styles, but it's so awesome to see him carry on that Michigan State legacy of having his dad win a 2000 national championship and then coming in and helping this team attempt to do the same exact thing. But yeah. Yeah,
he's been unreal, and I feel like he meets that mold a little bit of being a Spartan dog. Like, he's going to play scrappy. He's going to do everything that Tom Izzo wants, and he's also going to score the ball really efficiently. He's put together a lot of some of the best scoring that we've seen out of recent Tom Izzo players. I feel like Tyson Walker is one of the few comparisons that comes to mind for how much production they can give you on the offensive end while doing the same things that Tom Izzo's always kind of hit home on. But definitely a good point. Should be an interesting close of the season, especially tonight's game against Maryland, because Maryland averages 83.7 points per game and have won 8 out of their last 9. So definitely some tests for Michigan State as they round out their Big Ten regular season and their regular season overall. But they're sitting pretty tied first at the top of the Big Ten right now in that. Moving on a little bit to women's basketball on the other side. They've had a little bit of a different story as of late. 3-3 in their last 6 games. They're currently ranked number 23. I'll get it one of these days. After being ranked as highest as number 16 this season. They have 2 games left, one tonight at 7 against number 12 Ohio State and Minnesota as well. What have we kind of seen from Michigan State women's basketball? It's like been a little bit different than what we've seen kind of at the beginning of the season, mid-season as well.
Yeah, I think that, obviously going 3-3, after being ranked as 16, 15, the highest this season, it's not great, and it obviously doesn't help that we're going against the number 12 team in the country, but a win at Ohio State would be an amazing, feeling to have moving forward as we get closer to that Big Ten tournament. But I think that it just all depends. We won the last game against Indiana, so hopefully we can, just build off of that momentum after losing two straight against UCLA and USC. I think hopefully we can get that win today.
Yeah.
I think that what we need to keep in account for women's basketball is, though they did lose to USC and UCLA, two of the new Big Ten conference opponents, those 2 teams have been powerhouses the last few years, and they stayed within arm's length of both of them. They're 3-3 in their last 6 games, but 2 of those losses are to USC and UCLA. Taking a win over Ohio State in Columbus would be huge for them. But they're still number 23 in the country. They've been in the top 25 for 3/4 of the season. So obviously they have themselves in a tournament position. They did last year, even unranked. So it's going to be interesting to see how they finish out this season. Obviously, it's the same kind of storybook as men's basketball, and you're finishing the last few games of your season, half of them are against ranked opponents. So it's going to be tough, but I think that that's just a huge thing to keep in account for the women's team is they did lose to USC and UCLA, but they're 2 teams who have been on the map last year and the year before, and those are just teams that we aren't used to playing yet. So I think that that's something to definitely take into account as well.
Yeah, Michigan State's in a really good position here because they're projected a 5 seed right now in the Women's March Madness bracket. So, and especially still being ranked number 23. By no means are they in trouble. Just they've had a tough point of their schedule come up. This Ohio State game tonight is their 5th test against a ranked opponent this season. They've played 4 already. They've only won 1, and that was that win over Michigan. That was dominant. They've lost their other 3 games that they played against ranked opponents, including losses against Maryland, UCLA, and USC. But these losses have all been close, like you said, Madi. The UCLA loss was 83-75, and they were right within that game until the final few minutes until we started fouling and giving UCLA free throws, and they were number 1 at the country at the time. Or that was a 75-69 loss, my bad, sorry. And then 83-70 loss was number 4 USC with Juju Watkins, where she had, I think, 27 points. And then they also had a loss over number 8 Maryland, like I said. So this team is playing within games. 6 of their 7 losses, like total on the season, are by 10 points or less. So they're in games. But what I want to see for this final stretch of 2 games, especially going into the conference tournament, especially going into the Women's March Madness, is get the ball moving. Get the ball moving around a lot. I have a stat written down here that Jaden Simmons leads the team in assists per game with only 3.3. I know that's pretty low for any form of basketball standards. I know women's basketball is played a little bit differently than men's basketball is, but they only have 2 games this season total where a player has recorded over 6 assists in a game. I know 6 assists is a pretty good amount for one player to record in a game, but they played 27 games this year, and that's only happened twice. So I just want to see them get the ball moving around a little bit. They have great scorers such as Grace Van Sluten and Taryn Hairlock. So get the ball to them. Like I know they're a little bit more ISO dominant. They want to play through them like as the best players, obviously. But I feel like there's great shooting on this team, and they have the tools to where they can facilitate pretty well to get that ball moving. I think that's just like something that's not necessarily been a weakness, but something that they can definitely try to incorporate into their offense a little bit. But it's been working all season long, obviously. Just something to note, I feel like, as of late and going into the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, even against Indiana, I just have the stats pull up here. Only 5 of 25 from the 3-point and only 25 of 63. from the field. So obviously, got to shoot a little bit better than that. Like Haylock only won a seven from the three. But she did have 16 points against Indiana, so I think that the 3-point shooting has got to, improve to win these against these ranked opponents. And Ohio State definitely has a really good defense as well as a really good offense. I believe their leading scorer has 17 points per game, so it's going to be interesting to see how they can, stop her from scoring all those points.
I mean, Theron Halleck has had games where she's gotten into the high 20s in points. So, yes, 16, 17 points is good, but you need to start producing more, and that's how you're going to win games is if you keep producing more, have those good games. I think she had 29 points or something like that against Michigan. There's been a couple games this season where she's just flourished. So Halleck is going to be one that you want to see shooting the ball a little bit more. Even Julia Ayrault down low. There's so many talented ladies on this team that we know can produce more and attempt to take that win over a highly ranked Ohio State team who's been on the map for the last few seasons. They were pretty good last year, good this year, obviously ranked number 12. So yeah, like you guys said, every single game that they've lost has been within 10. So they just need to be able to produce more, produce a little bit more offense to put themselves ahead in these last 2 games of the season.
I think Julia's gonna have a good game today. I think she's really stepped up in kind of when we have to go up against a bigger opponent. She really steps up as the go-to player. Against USC and UCLA, we didn't win those games, but played 31 minutes in both, had 16 against USC, 18 against UCLA, had 23, but only had 3 against Wisconsin and 4 against Iowa. So obviously that's not great to have, but against ranked opponents, she obviously plays pretty well in that spotlight.
Yeah.
So I think that she's going to have to be a big part in this win today.
Most definitely. And like I've said before, I think this team is right there. Obviously, the close losses tell a story. And they've had a great offense all year, especially in wins. They average 84.8 points per game when they win games, and they have 20 of them. So that's a very good amount and a very good average to have. 68.1 in losses and points per game. So I just like I said, I just want to see them move the ball around, because if you're averaging 84 points per game in your wins and you're only still recording around 3 or 4 assists a game, I feel like that kind of tells the story. This team can be streaky. We've seen that. They battle the turnover battle sometimes. So I think this team is definitely in good position. They have a great opportunity tonight against Ohio State. I feel like that is a really good confidence booster, especially if they can get that win tonight. Put it on your resume. Go into March. Go into the conference tournament with a very, very solid year. Probably better than what they expected, especially starting the season unranked, and have some confidence going into March Madness. I think this team's built to do it. They have 3 double-digit scorers. They have a good offense. Defense is there. I think they can just go out and have some fun. And obviously the expectations aren't crazy high, so I feel like that's the best thing for them. Just play like you know how to do it. Go out there and have fun.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah. But that's kind of how we see. We just have to see how the season closes for women's basketball. Like we said, 2 games left against Ohio State and Minnesota. But just a little shout out too to women's tennis for MSU. 8 straight games they've won now, or 8 straight matches, we should say. They started the season 0-2. They're now 8-2. And in their win against Ball State, which was a 4-1 victory, Coach Kim Bruno recorded her 99th career win for the Spartans. It's fun when all these teams are just breaking records and going on win streaks, and it's so nice to see. I
mean, I've gotten to speak to Kim a few times. Really nice, really knowledgeable person about tennis. She believed in this team. She was obviously disappointed after the 0-2, but she kept telling me that this team is going to be special, and obviously winning 8 straight, bouncing back from that 0-2 start, just really goes to show how right she was about the potential of this team.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've talked about a lot on the podcast is these smaller teams, lesser known, not your power teams of football, basketball, hockey. Women's tennis has been on fire. Michigan State baseball went 6-0 for the first time since 2016. They're back in the polls for the first time since 2016. So it's awesome to see these smaller teams. I mean, gymnastics has been on a tear the past 3 or 4 seasons. It's just so great to see these smaller teams and these smaller sports getting the recognition that they deserve, especially for a women's tennis program that hasn't had the success they were looking for the past few seasons. To be able to start 0-2 and then go 8 straight is just amazing. So good for them. Shout out women's tennis.
Yeah, and one more point on it. These wins have been dominant, too.
Yeah.
Like, there's only been one match, and that was that first win of the season against Xavier, where they gave up more than 1 point to the opposing team. So they've had 3 shutouts during this span, and they are just running through teams like it's no tomorrow. Really, really cool to see for women's tennis. Hopefully they keep it up. They have upcoming, they have number 57 Columbia on March 2nd, at Iowa, at Nebraska coming up, and then they return home March 15th against Penn State. So some road matches coming up for them, but should be a very, very cool storyline to watch for the rest of the season for them. And then our last talking point of this episode, Madi's specialty. We're going to talk about some MSU hockey because I feel like enough time's passed since Captain Red Savage has gone down to kind of assess how this team is performing, and especially with a very, very tough Big Ten conference tournament coming up, and then Frozen Four and the actual national bracket coming up. It's going to be very interesting to see how this team is performing because they have not looked like themselves, especially since Captain Red Savage just go down. So, Madi, I want you to kind of tell us what you think you've seen since that injury.
So here's my opinion about losing Red. So I think last year was the same. We kind of, after winter break, after having that last bye weekend of the season, we kind of not fell into a slump, but didn't have the greatest record. We finished with a number 4 seed in the tournament. We're still seeded to be number 2 for this year. We are still in that top 4 conversation, even if we don't have Red. I think that there is an effect of losing your captain who's not on the ice, but he's still in the locker room. He's still there at practices every single day. He still has that voice as a leader on and off the ice. The numbers show that things have taken a downfall since Red, but I think that it would be a completely different story if we were to lose, say, Isaac Howard on offense, or if we were to lose Maxim Sturback or Patrick Geary or some of these power defensive players, are really high scoring offensive players. I think that things would be a lot different. And it's not to say that losing Red isn't tough. He's our captain for a reason. I don't think that it diminishes any chance of this team going on a run. They're special. They have something special. This team has something. They have grit. They have the star power of Isaac Howard, a Hobie Baker nominee. They have Trey Augustine, who's just been absolutely outstanding in the net, also a candidate for Hobie Baker. So yeah, the numbers show that maybe things haven't been producing as offensively as they would have liked it to since Red went down, but it still doesn't mean that this team isn't fit to go on a run, to make a stride at a national tournament title, to repeat Big Ten regular season, Big Ten tournament titles. So yeah, I mean, still a lot of season left. Obviously not the outcome that they wanted against Penn State this past weekend, but since Penn State has gotten their starting goalie back from injury, he has been absolutely outstanding for them. And I mean, we had well over 40 shots on goal each night. So it's not like we weren't producing offense. Yeah, there was some things to clean up, of course. Every single game there's something to clean up. No team plays a perfect game. You're going to make mistakes. But they were producing offense, but they just could not get anything to bounce behind Sergeyev, who's just been an outstanding goalie for Penn State since he's been back. So yeah, it should be interesting to see how the end of the season plays out. Is it tough that we lost Red? Absolutely. It's tough when any team loses their captain, but I don't think that affects the outcome of how this season can go.
Yeah, and I think especially now that it's getting to the postseason, I feel like it's good to kind of get these losses, get these like bumps out right now. Obviously, they've lost 3 out of their 5 their last 3 out of the 5 games, but they've all been close games. That too. I think the Ohio State series was the only one where it was like a little bit somewhat concerning, where they had a 4-1 win, but they lost 2-4, and then they beat Michigan 6-1, lost to them 2-1. The Penn State first game this past weekend was a 2-2 shootout loss, and then a 2-3 loss that Saturday night. So it's not like they're getting blown out. Obviously, the offensive production hasn't been the exact same. 3.8 goals per game in the first 27 games, 2.8 in their last 6. So it's obviously taken a little bit of difference. It's just a little bit of a smaller sample size for sure compared to 27 to 6 games. Obviously, not having Red Savage on the ice is different as well, but his voice is still there in the locker room. Like you said, he's still coming to practice, still showing out to games. He's doing what a captain would. Obviously, you're going to miss his voice actually on the ice and playing with him, but this defense for Michigan State has also provided them a lot of security this year. That's a big reason to why they've had the success they've had this year as well as last year. And then obviously having Trey Augustine in goal gives you a very, very good chance to be successful. Like you said, 40 shots on goal this past weekend. Like, the goals are going to come. A breakthrough's going to come. I feel like this is just not as much of like a struggle right now. It's just a little bit of a setback. You're facing adversity. You're still adjusting without one of your best players on your team. So obviously there's going to be time for adjustment. But they're still getting very similar production as to what they got, especially with shots on goal and especially with not letting up too many goals on the defensive side of the ice as well. Like I said, I think this team is going to be fine. The games are going to get a little bit more important now, so it's going to be interesting to see kind of how they battle that. And I mean, pretty much every series they've had is against a ranked opponent this past month, 2 months, and season overall. So they've got a lot of good tests with teams that are going to play them tough. Very, very good preparation for how the Big Ten is going to be in the tournament, as well as the Frozen Four, because Frozen Four are going to be facing a lot of better teams, arguably, than the Big Ten. So I think this team will be fine. It's just, I think we need to give them more time, because this is a 6 or so sample size of games that they've been without Red, and especially with a bye week thrown in between. So it should be interesting to see.
Absolutely. And you talk about the defense has been great. They're the youngest team in the conference. Their back end of their defensive players are so young. Their top defensive pairing are both sophomores. They usually have their extra skater is a freshman. They have a freshman paired with a junior. They have one defensive pairing that are seniors, that like have that leadership defensively. But the defense has proved, as well as Trey Augustine, that this is a team that can make a run at a national championship game. I expect them to at least make it to the Frozen Four, if not to the national championship game. They have a lot to prove. They have a lot to fight for. They could have done it last year, but playing Michigan 6 times in a season is never going to be fun, especially that 6th time after you've won 4 straight. But yeah, they're a super young team. They've still got a lot to learn. They've still got a lot to work for. This is just the beginning for them, especially when you're heading into the Big Ten tournament in those one-and-done games, and in the NCAA tournament in one-and-done games as well.
Yeah, Luke, did you have any thoughts?
I mean, all I have, I guess mine's more of a question, but is there anybody, since Red has gone down, is there anybody who you've kind of noticed who's sort of taken like that leadership role that MSU like lost with Red?
Yeah, I think that all 3 of their alternate captains have done a really great job. Carson Dorwart, Tiernan Chowdy, and Matt Baskell have all done amazing. I think Matt is one that really sticks out to me. I think that he's a really vocal guy on the team. That has no problem stepping up in those situations. Nicholas Andrews is a grad transfer this year, and he's done a fantastic job of being a leader. There's freshmen that'll step up. Matt Basgall at media availability said that Owen West is a guy who will be vocal, reminds him of Nash Nienhaus, who was the captain of the team last year. So I don't think it's just one person that's really stepped up. I think that there's a handful of guys that have stepped up in the place of Red, but especially Matt Baskell, who's just been outstanding defensively. He's leading defenseman on the team in points. So yeah, definitely Matt has stuck out a lot. But there's definitely other guys on the team as well that have done a really great job of doing so.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned that Owen West brought up last year's captain, because I think the team's still going to be hungry from last year, because obviously there was very high expectations. It was their first year of kind of having the success in a while that they did last year. They lost in the second round of that tournament, in the NCAA tournament, but they're built even better this year, even without Red Savage. They lost to Michigan after they beat them plenty of times last season as well in that tournament. So I think like they're just hungry. They know how close they are to competing for a national championship. They're still the number 2 team in the nation. Or I could be wrong. They're still top 5 for sure.
Number 3 in the USCHO polls, which is all voting based. Like people vote on that. But where it really matters is the pairwise, and they're ranked number 2. And that's where that's how they seed teams in the tournament. So the top 16 teams, technically top 14, and then 2 auto bids get placed into the tournament. So we're still number 2.
Yeah.
That's where it matters.
It could be a lot worse. I mean, it's not like we're talking with the wheels completely falling off and we've fallen completely out the picture of the tournament in general. Like, this team is still a top team in the nation.
Absolutely.
I think, like I've said before, this is kind of just facing adversity, and it just like it came at this point of the season. Like, that happens. Injuries happen in sports. We all know that, and it's going to happen kind of inevitably, but it's good to shake the dust off now. I feel like this is just an adjustment. It's a little bit of adversity. No great championship team is going to win a championship without facing some sort of adversity at the college or pro level. So I feel like this is just a good test. It's going to take a lot, especially from Coach Nightingale, to kind of get this team back and get them all bought in, to convince them that they still can compete at the highest level. I know that they all believe they can as well, but really just kind of sticking that into their brains and making sure that nothing else has changed in terms of the championship window, and nothing else has fallen off the table. They're also a very young team, so even next year they're still going to be good, despite not having Red Savage, Trey Augustine, and some of those seniors. They're still going to be good next year. So this program is built for success. I think they're going to be hungry from their past results, and especially now that they're good for the first time in however long it's been. And like, I mean, not by good, I mean like championship contending. So I think it'll definitely be a very interesting close to the season. But did you guys have any like final thoughts or anything like that?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that one thing that people need to take into account is last year Denver was ranked top 4, top 3, top 2, 1 for a majority of the season, and then lost their final few games. Just like Michigan State has kind of been doing, was knocked down to number 5 seed in the tournament, and then went on to win the national championship for the second time in 3 seasons. So I think that Michigan State will never be out of the picture when it comes to this national championship. I think that it's anybody's game. You never know what can happen if there can be an upset. I mean, we almost got upset by Western Michigan in the first game of the tournament last year. So, yeah, it should be interesting seeing what happens this weekend. We go to Notre Dame to South Bend, and they've got a lot going on for them this weekend, especially on Saturday. Coach Jackson retires. He's been a name in college hockey in the NHL for the National Team Development Program for years, so they retire their head coach, who's been there for quite some time. It's their senior night, so we got our senior night spoiled. It's time to go spoil somebody else's. But we sweep this weekend, and Minnesota splits in Pennsylvania against Penn State. We get the tournament title and we get the bye week. So there's a lot riding on this weekend, especially with Penn State trying to take the sweep on their own home ice. Yeah.
There's just a last question too. Is Minnesota guaranteed that seed right now? If they were to win 2 in Pennsylvania at Penn State, and we were to still win 2 against Notre Dame, Minnesota would take that Big Ten title?
Yep, they do, because they jumped ahead of us 1 point after sweeping Ohio State this past weekend. So we are at, well, no, I think they jumped 2 points ahead of us. So I think we're at 44, or they're at 44, we're at 42. Either way, if they sweep and we sweep, they get the title. If they split and we sweep, we get the title. I don't know. There's so many different hypotheticals. There's so many different hypotheticals.
You know, it's that time of the season when you have to do the math to figure out who's going to win that.
Lots of it.
It gets to be a fun time, but they're still right in the thick of things, as we've said, and especially still competing for the Big Ten regular season title. It'll be a lot to see. But Luke, do you have any final thoughts as well?
Oh, I don't have any final thoughts. I let the hockey people talk about hockey, so I just stay out of it.
I am honored that you classified me as a hockey person because Maddie is obviously the one that's
You know more than me, and so you're a hockey person.
I respect that title. I will probably hold on to that for as long as I can ride it. But that'll just about do it for this episode of Sports Roundtable. It's been fantastic to talk with you guys again. And a lot to watch, especially since we won't be meeting next week with spring break going on here for us as students. A lot to keep an eye on for, especially with Michigan State men's basketball playing right now. Got to throw that game on when we get home. But it's been great talking to you guys, like I said again. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. And thanks for tuning in as well. Bye.